Hello everybody and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and to my February wrap up. Yes, we are keeping the structure February wrap up, and just to remind you, because this is the new format, I will talk about the books that I've read obviously in February, give you some statistics. I'm not going to talk extensively about the books that are part of one of the two big projects, the 1001 books by women I want to read before I die, and the Reading Europe project, which I started this year. I will mention the books, but not talk about them extensively because I make separate videos to wrap up, to talk about, to check in about these two projects. Okay. February, today is the 1st of March. Yeah, so February is just over, and I had a good reading month, not nothing extraordinary, but it was a good reading month. I have some statistics for you. I have to look that up because, as you know, I can't remember a thing if I don't have my... Yeah, so I have read 13 books. I will put the numbers up here somewhere at some point. Six books of fiction, 7 books still allergies. Yes. 7 books of non-fiction, 2 translated works of fiction. For the 1001 Women project, I read 3. For the Read Europe, I read 2. I also read 3 books for the Booktube prize that I'm not going to talk about at all because we're still in the middle of the first round. But I finished 3 of the 3. I'm almost done with the 4th one. The deadline is end of March, so I'm very confident that I will not give Robert any grief and be that I'll be able to finish the books before the deadlines. And I also, as you can see, I also read 3 male authors. Okay, so as for the 1001 Women project and the Read Europe, I'm just going to show you the books. I talked about them, most of them already, quite a bit. The first is Clarice Lispector, Hour of the Star, last book of Clarice Lispector, translated by Benjamin Moser. I talked about that in my last check-in for the 1001 Women. Needless to say, I loved it. I had difficulty getting into it, but in the end, I loved it. It's set in Rio, and it's an unfaithful narrator, Rodrigo, talking about the life of a young poor woman, Macabea. Loved it. The other one also for 1001 Women was short story collections, Reasons to Live by Amy Hempel. I haven't wrapped that up properly. It's on the list for the book club. Sandy, I'm co-hosting with Sandy's book club, and this was the pick for January, February. Like I said, short story collection published in the 1980s, and for me it was a bit of a not hugely successful read. And then the book that I also finished in February was this heavy chunker, The Grey House by Mariam Petrosian, translated from the Russian by Yuri Makhkasov. This is a book for Reading Europe, and I finished this. I can't really remember when I finished this, but this is kind of a fantasy-ish book of a house where disabled young people live and go to school. It has various timelines. It's quite complex. And I will say it is definitely different from books you normally read when you look at fantasy, wizard schools or stuff like that. This is definitely different. But the first video of the for the Reading Europe, I will put up, I think, next week or the week after. Okay, what else did I finish? Oh yeah, there was one book that I talked about in my mid-month book check-in, mid-month check-in, not book check-in, which I will also keep up. That is in the middle of the month. I will tell you what I read so far and what I am currently reading and planning on reading for the second half of the month. I do that so that the monthly wrap-up, if I have to wrap up 10 books, this video is gonna be like 40 hours long. So anyway, the book that I wrapped up, Mid-Month Book Bash, was a book that I really didn't like. And that was a non-fiction book, a classic, Edith Hamilton, Mythology, Timeless Tales of Gods and Heroes. No goddesses, of course, and no heroines. That says it all. I really thought it was extremely stupid, sexist bullshit. Talking about rape in a way that, nobody suffers from rape. It's just, no. If you want to read a book about mythology, this is not the way to go, for sure. At least it wasn't for me. And when I look at the comments from you, or many of you, subscribers, viewers, I'm not the only one. So there you go. Okay, on to the books. I have a case of bleeding lipstick again. 3 books I want to talk about a little more in detail because I mentioned them previously, but I haven't properly wrapped them up. The first is part of an ongoing project together with Heidi from my reading life. We are reading the Lindley series. If you follow my channel, you know that. This is book number 15, Careless in Red, published in 2008, I think. And we read this first half of February, I think. And we will read the next one, by the way, in March. So we are really trying to keep up the pace because there are 22 books. Now there are 21 books, but in September there will come a new one. So then 22. And like with 1001 books by women, I want to finish this series before I die. So Careless in Red is the first book, proper book about Lindley investigating after the big break in book number 13, No One as a Witness. If you haven't read the series, if you are reading the series and I'm not there yet, I'm not going to tell you what happened, but it's a big break and change in trajectory, what happens. And one of my subscribers asked me if you're interested in the series, but you don't want to really start with book number 1. I think this is a good book to start because it's kind of, after this huge break, and you will know what the break is when you read this book, you can start fresh, I think. So if you are not willing to commit to 22 books, but want to start with Lindley, then I would advise you to do this one. So here we have Lindley in Cornwall, still recovering from what happened, and he is not in good shape. Like I said in my previous video when I talked about this, he's rather smelly. And of course he stumbles upon a dead body, and the dead body turns out to be a murder, and then he is kind of drawn into the investigation that is led by a local DI, Beatrix Hannaford from Cornwall. Barbara Havers will be brought in, Lindley's regular second in command, and they will investigate the murder. It's a climber, a young man, 18, who fell down while climbing a cliff, and obviously his gear was tampered with. And in typical Elizabeth George fashion, you have this whole community kind of being suspicious for the investigators, and you have a lot of personal issues. The young man, Alexander, was not that nice, at least not when it came to his relationships to women. So there's a lot of possibilities of a woman taking revenge. You also have some really weird family relations that might add into that, or might be a reason for a murder. And it's wrapped up, as always, really nicely, and the characters are at the center of this series. Even the characters in a book like this you will never see again, like the victim's family and the people in this village, we will probably never encounter again. So it was one of my favorites so far in the series, for sure. And then I also mentioned that I want to read more Octavia Butler. And especially, I want to finally finish the Patternist series. And in order to do that, I reread the first one, Wild Seed, which was published in 1980. It was not the first publication, by the way. The first publication is the next one, A Mind of My Mind, that was published 3 years prior to this one. But this is supposed to be the first in the series. And it is fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian mix. The center of the book are two main characters, not really people, but characters. Doro, a 4,000-year-old spirit, in portrayed as a man, male, and his nemesis, and I always struggle with the name, I told you already, Anyanwu, who is 400 years old, also immortal, and a healing spirit. She can heal herself, but also other people. Doro wants to breed this superhuman race, and he is a real piece of shit. And then the two meet, and it takes off from there. The story starts in the mid 17th century in Africa, probably Nigeria, because Anyanwu is Igbo, but it's not specified. And then we travel up to 1840-ish. The story changes after the first third into the US, where it then stays. This is, Octavia Butler has, for me, a real power of storytelling and language. There are things, however, that I always struggle with when I read Octavia Butler. I often feel that the female's character's willingness to put up with an abusive partner, or with male-female abuse in general, really bugs me. And I haven't quite made up my mind yet what to think about it, but I had the same with one of my favorite books, not only by her favorite books, but of my favorite books, Dawn, which is also which is more a sci-fi series. And I had the same thing, this idea that you would be willing to overlook, forgive, get over rape, and then have a relationship with your rapist, or if he forces you to have sex with somebody else, you just accept. I struggle with that. I don't know. If you have read The Wild Seed and you know what I'm talking about, let me know how you feel about that. But it's a kind of an when I read Octavia Butler's books. But yes, so I finished this one and I'm ready. I bought already the next one, which you saw if you watch my haul. So Mind of My Mind is the next one that I will read. And another book that I finished was another sci-fi novel, Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. I think this one was published recently, 2023. I read her debut novel, didn't get along with it, but I thought she sounds interesting, so I'll try this. And I have to say again, it just did not work in the end. The plot did not work. I thought the premise was really great, dystopian setting, and we have this young woman, late 20s, who is from the US but can't go back because the borders are closed. So she is in Europe, she is a chef, and then she is hired by this billionaire, together with his daughter, with the fantastic name Aida, to cook in this mountaintop resort where you still have all the food that nobody else can get, and where you still have fresh air. I thought this premise was fantastic, but then the story kind of dwindled. I didn't really see the point in the end. I don't know. The language is good. The descriptions are really good of the food, of the surroundings, I did like the characters. I thought they were mostly interesting, especially Aida, the daughter of the billionaire. But the plot was kind of not well thought of or not well structured. And so it's not a bad book, but it was disappointing to me that there was not more conciseness, or whatever you want to call it. So I don't think she is a writer for me, I have to conclude, because in the end, I really like a good plot. I read plotless novels. That's not the point, but if you have a plot, it needs to make sense and it has to be good. And this just wasn't. So those are the books that I wanted to talk about, that I can talk about. Again, was a good reading month, and on to the next one. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I'll speak to you all soon in the next one, next Sunday.